All right, so everybody has the data sets. Hopefully, open it up and check the walls that we built last time. Um, I want to take a time to finish the discussion on some of the material. Last time we created a new material from scratch. Let's review that very quickly. The process of creating a new material is we open the material library under the Manage tab. It's the second icon from the upper left side of the ribbon. The material library will display the list of materials available in this project for this template. And every material in Revit has a list of properties defined by all these different tabs in the right side. You have metadata associated with materials. You have a graphic appearance, which defines how the material looks in projection and cut. Surface patterns can have a foreground and a background a pattern. Patterns, I think I discussed with you guys last time. The patterns, there are two types of patterns, the drafting ones, which are generic representation of materials that the scale of those items remain consistent between the different views. And then we have model patterns that are associated with unitized representation of materials, such as style and single or panels. And in this particular, in model patterns, the size of the module, it's maintained across all the views. And so the density changes according to the view. We created a new pattern from scratch. We name it out of the box. You can get parallel lines or cross hatches at different angles. But to create something more elaborate, we have to import a PAT file coming from an AutoCAD definition. What I did not mention, and this is a complementary and expanded explanation from last class, is that you have different ways of display the material properties in this material list. In the material browser, which you open under the Manage tab, Materials, you have different ways of display these list of materials. You can apply some filters to only display the materials that are in use. You click the drop-down menu that it's on the project materials title, and you can see that when you see in use, then the list is much shorter. That means that this material is in use by the elements in the project and elements in the family. So in the family browser, there are components that are making use of these materials as well. You can also show the unused materials. So sometimes if the project has an excessive amount of materials coming from the template and you don't need them, this is a quick way to reduce the file size by deleting unused materials. I'm going to display them all, show all. In addition, this drop-down menu has a way to display the material not only as a list, but as a thumbnail view. And when you do that, this is probably, for me, this is probably more friendly because it shows you a larger thumbnail of the material. You can always narrow your selection using the search cell. And then you can also sort by color, and you can also sort by, or you can make larger tiles. For example, if you switch this to 256 by 256, it gives you a greater detail on what the material looked like. 64 by 64 seems sufficient in my end to visually identify material. Okay, so another thing that you may notice in this list of materials is that some materials have in the lower left corner of the thumbnail this tiny triangle in yellow. And this is a visual clue that the assets consumed or the assets used to build these materials are legacy assets. So what happened? So in the Revit 2023, Revit started to implement the next generation of materials, which are called PBSM, which is physically based material. And one of the advantages of using PBM is they're using a new technology. These are, I think these PBMs are proprietary format from a company called ArcVision. And ArcVision it's a company that has the copyright of the files with the extension, the files that create physically realistic renderings. And so they are in the business of creating photorealistic content. In fact, I'm going to pull here, I'm going to open that website, ArcVision. And so they've been around forever, from maybe for 25 years. And they have a proprietary copyright of the files with the extension RPC. And RPC stands for realistic photo content. And so the Revit ships with a set of families that comes with RPC definition, but it's a short library, and we're not in the business of creating content for our customers. And so there's a lot of companies out there that produce blocks definitions and family definitions for different architectural industries, and RPC is a format by ArcVision, and then sell these extensions for all these different types of programs. And so RPC content works for not only for Revit, but they work for Enscape, Rhino, V-Ray, etc. And you can purchase packages of RPCs based on the type of renderings that you intend to use. I think they are based on subscriptions, and they have different pricing packages depending on the amount of elements that you want to get. I think annually is $250 and $650, and then monthly is $40, something like that. But this is a very, very extensive library of assets, and they will get display in your view when you switch to realistic mode, or when you send your scene for rendering inside Revit, or using a third-party rendering engine. So why I'm mentioning this here is because RPC in 2012 evolved to a new type of format, which is RPC 2.0, which supports physically based materials. And a physically based material, it's a new way of representing a material that represents light just as it is in real, in the real environment. And so it automatically, or it represents bouncing, light bouncing and reflections and refractions with a higher fidelity than in the previous technology. And it does require the texture image to be created and formatted in a different way that it is the legacy material. And so if you are planning to create a render using Autodesk assets, it is better to avoid the use of the legacy material so you can get a better and higher quality. Let's do an example. I think, how do you find which assets are legacy and which are not? So, and in the asset browser, which is the third icon on the lower left side of the material browser, you have access to the material library. And notice that in the appearance library, I'm going to open the folder called concrete. There are some materials that have the yellow corner and some other assets that do not have the yellow corner. I'm going to open this. I'm going to make this list a little bigger, 64 by 64. And so if the icon, if the material library thumbnail does not have the yellow mark, then this is a next generation of material. And I would encourage you to use it because the degree of detail during the rendering process is far superior than the legacy one. And so Revit support both legacy and new generation of materials. But if your purpose is to create Revit elements for rendering purposes, use physically based material. An example is like the grass. If you search for the grass asset, there are some grasses that are legacy and some other ones that are new. And so when you render using the new generation of grass, for example, the grass is very crisp. It almost feels like it's it has this three-dimensionality, and the way it represents light mirrors what would grass look like in real life. You have this like higher quality grass that I would use for a high photorealistic rendering. So just want to make that clarification that you have both options to use legacy and next generation materials. Any question? Okay. Then the other thing I did not mention is that you can create your own libraries. So for example, the easy thing for a practitioner for architectural practices is to have a template with the most common materials already loaded in the template so that your users don't have to hunt and create new materials on the fly. And so in the process of setting a project or a customer template, there's a need to review the definitions of the materials and make sure that those materials are available to your users without the need of recreate one from scratch. There's always going to be a need to to create custom materials. It's impossible to foresee every potential material in a project. And so in Revit, you can create a new library of materials. And this is how you do it here. And this is the first icon in the lower left side. This create a file with the extension ADSK live. This is Autodesk material library. And this material can be project-based or it could be company-based. The advantage of building your own library file is that it can be, you should place it in a location that it's common across all your users. For example, the server. And as long as everybody has access to that server location, then the material definitions can be distributable. So, for example, I'm going to create here my custom material. I'm going to call it custom. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing you that you have the potential of load different materials. You see how it says, after I create a library, I can open it. This material library is going to be empty. If I open the custom one I just created, you see how the panel doesn't display any material. But as you develop, let's say, project-specific materials, it's a good idea to, here are the different folders. You see, there's the AEC materials that comes out of the box, and it has this lock. And then you have these custom folders that I just created, and when you hover over it, tells you where it's saved, where it's stored. If a user creates a material, make sure that it's readable by other users. Otherwise, the texture project file path are going to be reported as missing. And when you render, you're going to get this message that cannot find a specific material. And the way you define the material library, it's under the options. So if you go to the file options and look at the file locations, here you have, these are the path for the local files, template, family template file, point clouds. There's a render here. So here, if you want to have all your users access to the same project or company-specific material library, go into the options, then hit the rendering tool and click the plus sign to navigate to a project file, a custom material library file. This is going to be saved in the Revit INI. The Revit INI, it's a configuration file. It's a text format with that capture the custom settings of Revit. And big firms, for example, they push the Revit INI across all the workstations using some automatic scripts to make sure that every user have a consistent set of options and settings and folder path so that they have the resources available at any point. So this is beyond the Revit 101. But this is what BIM managers and IT managers should do. Make sure that every user has the right path to the family templates, the folder content, the families, libraries, the material libraries, and this is where you would do it at a machine level. You can also do it in the INI file and distribute it. Any questions? And something that was new in Revit 2024, which I cannot demonstrate here, is the ability to set BIM 360 or ACC folder path. And so if you are working remotely in disconnected locations, geographically dispersed teams, then you could set up a BIM 360 folder or an ACC folder that is connected with the project. And as long as the user has access to that folder location in BIM 360, then they will be able to reload the files, the custom textures, and they wouldn't show missing when they load it. Okay, any questions? All right, so let's talk about visibility graphics, and let's open the floor plan level 1. I'm going to duplicate the floor plan level 1, duplicate view. And when you duplicate, notice that there are 3 types of duplicates. You can duplicate the view and the geometry inside the view. You can duplicate the view and the geometry with the details, the view specific objects. And remember, view specific objects are tags, dimensions, text, images. You can also duplicate as a dependent. A dependent, it's a child view of a parent. Any changes in the child view are transferred to the parent view. Any change in the parent view are also transferring to the dependent view. Dependent views are mostly used when we want to like create enlarged plans from a sector plan. So if you have a big floor plan and you have sectors, and you want to have a consistent display of elements at 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch, for example, then you create these dependent views. So let's duplicate. Let's just do a regular duplicate. And I'm going to rename level 1, and I'm going to call this construction plan. When you duplicate a view, you have the opportunity to rename it in the project browser. And notice how the images that were adjacent to the floor plan are no longer there, because images, like these images that are here, are view specific. And so these are considered like the equivalent of pasting elements on paper space. And these elements will not get copied unless you do the duplicate with detailing. If I do duplicate with detailing, it will also make a copy of the view specific objects. Okay, so the construction plan, it does not have any relationship with, it doesn't have the view specific objects of the other view. But I want to show you that you can have different ways of representing a floor plan. So, for example, if this construction plan is sort of a schematic, you could choose to display all the walls in a single black color. And the way to do that is by reviewing the properties of the partition and switching the detail view to cores. So let's talk about the detail level. Detail level enables me to display elements of different categories at different resolutions. In this example, the detail level is set to fine, and so I'm able to see all the layer configuration of the walls. If you change this to cores, notice that I no longer see all the internal configuration of the walls. Everything is set to cores. That means I only see 2 lines. And one of the properties of the partitions, if you select the partition and hit the edit type, access the type properties of a wall, selected and edit type, is that there's a parameter called cores fill pattern. So when a partition type is in a view that is set to cores view, then it has the ability to display an alternate pattern. And so, for example, this is I want to represent in cores view all the walls as a solid black fill. Sometimes we do this to do this presentation type. So a solid fill color black, this is only going to be displayed when the view is set to cores view. So I hit OK here. And now my walls are solid black as a result of that setting. Does that make sense? It's very simple. It's a type property. Select the element, edit the type, edit the core scale fill pattern, solid fill, and change it to black. And so the other thing is that in certain, if this was a presentation, maybe you want to. Sorry, I'm going to switch up my phone. If this would need to display like a floor hatch, we could do that using visibility graphics. So the floor that you see here is this slab at grade. In the definition of this floor doesn't have, when I look at the way we build this floor, it doesn't have any material associated with that. And maybe that's fine. Maybe for simplicity, our floor is just a single structural layer with a generic material. But there may be instances where I want to show a hatch in this view, but I don't want to show it in other views. And so visibility graphics, or VG, if you type on the fly, VG, visibility graphics override. Allow me to apply a new pattern override to elements of specific categories. And so in this example, I could force the view to display a pattern for all the floors in the project. So let's do that example. If I go to VG here, type on the fly VG, that's going to open the visibility graphic override dialog box. And here you have columns that control the display of elements in projection, and columns that display the projection of elements in cut. And so for this particular view, you can say, okay, my floors in this particular view, and find the category of floors. the projection pattern needs to be dotted. Maybe this is a presentation view, and but you want the floor to display in this view as a dotted pattern. So click the pattern override, and these are settings that I'm going to impact this particular view. And so on the foreground, I want a pattern that is sand, and that's it, sand. And then hit OK. And this is projection stuff, projection pattern. Hit apply, hit OK. And now if you notice, hopefully transferring the, there is now this sand look into the floors. And it's view specific. It only happens within this view. And so you can do that. But this applies the override to elements of the entire category. So it doesn't make a differentiation between different floor types. If we want to apply a different material to an element, for example, this was the floor, but inside this floor, I could have exposed concrete in the exterior, or maybe in the interior, I want to have a different, like a plank material. So we can use a different technique to apply a different material to another material, and that is using the split face. So split face allow me to define a boundary on the surface of an existing element, and then apply a different material to that boundary. To make it easier for me, I am going to isolate this floor. So for example, I'm going to select this floor, and I'm going to do this twice if you want to watch first, and then we'll do it together. I'm going to select this floor in the floor plan, and I'm going to isolate it. You can isolate elements using the, remember this is the glass, the tiny glasses icon. And I'm going to isolate, you know, I'm going to isolate both I'm going to select a grid, and I'm going to select the floor, and I'm going to isolate those categories. And what this does is it creates this blue boundary around the view with the tag temporary hide. And this is just a working temporary display of elements to do some task. And so I want the interior of this house to have a wood plank representation. And then I want the part that is exposed to the exterior to have a concrete representation. So I'm going to use split lines to do that. And I'm going to do this twice, so don't worry if you fall behind. First, select the object, and in the Modify Contextual tab, hit the split line and select the face you want to edit. This takes me to sketch mode, and then I use sketch lines to define regions. I'm going to use a line to establish this is my region number 1, escape. And then I'm going to do another one for here. And I have 3 regions here. This is my region number 1, which is this square here. This is my region number 2, which is this thing here. And then everything else That is my region number 3. Notice that I don't need to put sketch lines in the boundaries. The boundaries by default are considered sketch lines. So all I needed to do is to create these 2 lines on one end, these 2 lines in another end. And then I hit the green checkbox. Now I have the surface of this floor has the potential to display 3 different materials. And then to apply the material, I go to the Modify tab. Right below the split phase, there is the Paint tool. This gives me, again, access to the material library. Look for the material called plank. There's a wood planks here. Select it, and then touch my largest area. Now, the reason it's not kicking is because the visibility graphics, it's already there. It's already overriding it. And so visibility graphic overrides forces this all the floors in the project to display this dash line. So what I need to do is go to VG, disable the floor override, floor, and to clear the override, you go to VG and clear the override. There you go. So now I need to apply like the sand, the concrete finish to the exterior ones. So I go again to paint. I look for concrete, the lightweight concrete or the cast in place. Hopefully they have a hatch. Yeah, there it is, and there it is. So I have a single floor display in 3 regions, and each of those regions display a different material.
Cesar, can I interrupt? I have a question.
Yeah.
So I am always confused how these VG works in terms of it overrides. It's when you click VG and an override, it's for the entire project and not view specific. Is that correct?
It applies an override for all the elements of a category, regardless of their types. So you can have 10 different floor types. All the floors in that particular view are going to receive the graphic override. But it's view specific. That means it's only applied to that view.
Okay, it's more, okay, understood.
Yeah.
So it's going to override whatever we have in the type properties.
Correct.
Okay. And in that specific view. So
Correct.
if I had the same floor on level 2, it will still not be applicable there. Correct?
It's only in this view.
It will be only in this view.
Yeah.
Okay. I always, that's never, I get a little confused there, and I'm always trying back and forth and fixing it. But okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great comment, because that connects to my next point. If you need a consistent set of visibility displays between different views, then you can create a view template. And instead of opening every view and applying these individual graphic overrides, you just apply the template. And so all construction plans, all ceiling plans, ideally should have the same type of line weights and view definitions graphically. And so what we do is we save a definition of the view templates, and then we apply it. I'm getting there in a second.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, these 3 things never really fell in place, but yeah, thank you. That clarifies things.
Okay. All right. If you fall behind, I'm going to undo all my paints and my light. All right, here you go. And I'm going to reset. This is where we were. We had a floor and we apply a visibility graphic overrides. The first thing we need to do is to remove that graphic override, because that is going to apply it. So there's the visibility graphic override overwrite whatever custom painting you do on top of a surface. And so I go to VG here, go to floors, and remove the override. And so the pattern override that I applied earlier, hit on the cell that says pattern and clear the override. When you clear the override, it's gonna clean the values and then hit OK. So notice that the pattern is no longer visible in the floor plan. And now what I need to do is create 3 split regions. So I select the floor and I select one of the grids, and I'm going to isolate it. So the isolate tool is in the view controls. It's the little icon with the glasses, and I want to isolate the categories. Then I have the floor and the grids visible on screen. Then I have the floor definition, but it's going to have different finishes. I need to split it in 3 regions, and you do that using the split tool. So select the floor, and the contextual tab, hit under the geometry tools, hit the icon that looks like a little TV. It's called the split face tool. This is going to ask me, Revit is going to ask you, you want to split the face of what? The next step is to select what is the face you want to work on. So select, approach the edge of the floor, and that's going to highlight the top of the floor. And then split face takes me into sketch mode. And I use sketch lines to generate different face areas. You don't need to place any line in the outer boundary of a floor. So I'm going to use lines to define what is concrete and what is wood plank. So from here to this intersection, that intersection, this is region number 1. And from here to here to here, these are just chain of lines. This is my region number 2. And that's all I need to do. I have 3 regions, region number 1, region number 2, and region number 3. And then the boundaries, do not place a sketch line on top of a boundary. Revit is going to get angry. All right. Now that I have my 3 regions defined, I hit the green checkbox.
Excuse me, Cesar, I have a question.
Yeah.
So what is there a difference between the split face versus the add spline line on the right side on the ribbon?
Let me finish here. This is the split face.
Yeah.
And you say in split line?
There is
oh yeah.
A tool.
Yeah.
Well, is there a difference between these two?
Yeah, split is used to divide walls in half. Split works with walls, and it also works with lines. But they are completely separate elements, completely different commands. So they are not related at all. So split face, it create regions on a selected surface, and a split, this is split geometry. So this is split
And there is
element.
another tool called Add Split Line.
Add a split line. What's that?
I don't know why it's not showing. After you select the floor, there is an option showing, I think. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Yeah, this is to create a sloping surfaces.
Oh, okay. It's different, huh?
It's different. This is to create the depression points or create ridges and valleys
I see.
on a flat surface. So a split line allow me to assign a different line elevation to a surface.
Okay.
So
You're right.
can't you do that on like a roof or a slab? Any type of like horizontal surface you can apply.
Yeah.
Splitting points. Or you add a point, then you can add split lines to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so I'll go back to the split lines because I think I need to review how to use them. So now I have a floor with 3 split surfaces. And now the last step is to paint it with the appropriate material. So right below the split face, it's the paint tool, which opens the list of materials in the project. And look for the concrete cast in place. And you click on the project, click on the material, and then click on the face. And it's going to dash it. It's going to place dots on it. Click on the material, click on the face. And then for the rest of the floor, I'm going to do the wood plank. So if you search for plank, there's one material called wood planks. Click on the material, click on the face, and hit done. Notice that the default orientation of the pattern is north-south, but maybe you want the planks to run east-west. And so to rotate pattern, you can tab select one of the lines and rotate it. So I'm going to do this twice because this is the first time we're going to use the rotate command, and the rotate in Revit, it's a little different from other rotates. So I hover over the floor, hit the tab key. The tab key allows me to access the internal lines in the hatch. And then I click the rotate tool, which places a pivot point at the geometrical center of that line. And then you see this rotating line, which is like a dialer. This is a representation of the start of the rotation angle. So this is from what point you're going to measure a rotation. Usually is 90 degrees or 0 degrees, but this is like the start of the rotation angle. And I'm going to snap it to 0 degrees, and then you can type a specific angle, and this hatch needs to be rotated 90 degrees, so I type 90. And now the rotation of the hatch flips. I'm going to do it again if you fall behind. All right, here we are with the plank running north-south. This is the default configuration of the hatch. So you hover over, hit the tab key, tab key. That's going to enable you to pre-highlight one segment in the pattern. Click to select, And now you're going to use the rotate command, which is under the modify tools. You see that grip is a representation of the pivot point, and this dialer, clock dialer, that's the start of the rotation angle. I'm going to put it on, I'm going to snap it to 0 degrees. That's my mouse click. And then move the mouse and type 90 degrees. And that rotates it. Okay. So I have 3 separate hatches, three separate split regions, and 2 regions representing concrete. So these, any question here? You can disable, no, I'm going to stay in the temporary hide isolate, because there's another tool I want to show you guys, which is the split lines, now that you brought it over in the discussion. Any question? All right, we all know that there are no, at least on the exterior side, there are no flat surfaces. Water needs to run down a certain direction. And so when in Revit has this ability to create slope edges in a flat surface and assign it with different elevation values. And so when you select a floor, you're going to see a set of, this is a set of different, they're called shape editing tools. And these enable me, basically enable you to model the surface of a floor or the surface of a roof or the surface of a structural slab and add the sloping points and the sloping edges. And so the way this works is there are 2 types of modifiers. You have points and you have split lines. And a split line, what it does is that, again, it creates a region, create regions inside a surface that will have that will display a unique sloping distribution. I'm going to do this twice. So if you want to watch first how I'm going to slope this floor. So this is my strategy for the Miller house. Everything here is going to remain flat. This is remain flat. And then the parts that are exposed to the exterior need to drain towards the outside. And so what I need to do is to make sure that this portion here and this portion here has a way to slope to the outside. And the easy way to do that is, and this is my strategy, it could be different for other designers, is that I'm going to split this in half here. This is going to slope this direction, and then there's going to be a low point at that corner. So that corner is going to be a minus 2 inches below the rest. Minus 2 inches here as well. Now we are designing here sloping systems, which typically happen on the roof. In this Miller house, the roof it's very simple, so I don't have the ability to explain that on the roof level, but this is how you would do it in a roof as well. And so in order to slope the floor using this strategy, I need to first define the split line. And the split line is going to create regions in the surface that slope independently. So this is going, this here and this here are going to be split lines, split line, split line. And all I'm doing is saying to Revit, hey, I need these areas with the X to be separated from the interior floor. So I'm splitting for sloping purposes. This is different from the split face that we were doing before. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 split lines. And after the split happens, I'm just going to put a point here and indicate that that point is going to be -2 inches. And I'm going to put another point here, and that's going to be -2 inches. And then Revit is going to automatically create the geometry needed, the triangulation needed to make that surface slope. So, so let's do that. I'm going to use the add split line. Oh, shoot. It's incompatible with the splitting elements. It's a bummer. So if I use split faces, I cannot use the modifiers. That sucks. So Revit, you see how it says the highlight elements no longer contain a face. If you want to use shape editing tools, you have to delete the splitting elements. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate that here. Let's see if I add a point. Yeah. It would work if this was not a split face. What can I do? I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm just going to demo. You don't need to do it on your end. And this one, I'm going to modify. I'm going to add a split line. Yes, I'm going to delete the split elements. And so I create these split lines here and another split line here. I'm creating a region there. And then I'm going to do another split line here and from here to here.
Wouldn't you want to reset the shape back to just a flat plane before you add splitting lines? Possibly.
I think Revit wasn't happy that there were split edges from the split face tool. And so right now it's flat.
Okay.
Right now everything is flat after I deleted it. Now that I have these two regions, all I need to do is select this shape handle point and indicate that that's going to be, I don't know, minus 1 inch or 1.5 inch. And same here. This point is no longer 0, it's minus 1 inch. And then, and that's it. Click escape. Let's switch this to 3D view. Oh, I have a single plane right now. So this whole thing, it's sloping in that direction. This is a single point, right? Like if I want to slope it this direction, then I need to also add a different value here. Let's do that. I'm gonna go to my floor plan, edit boundary, no, not edit boundary, modify subelements, and I do these control points, the control key to select multiple points at a time. So I have 4 points here, and I give them an elevation of, I don't know, 1/2 inch. 0.5 inches. Minus half an inch. Ooh, those are the automatic slope phases that happen. It is impacting the rest of the geometry, so that's not working. What can I do here to make that line there? Oh, I'm gonna modify sub-elements and just this one. Well, that needs to be 0. Let's do another strategy. Instead of, I'm going to add a point in the middle of it. And this is a representation that it's sloping towards the center, and then there's a drain there. I changed my strategy. And you see how the split line here prevents this point to impact the interior. The split line is actually creating boundaries that limit the region impacted by modifying. And so this is what would happen. These are, I have 4 slopes here. And another slope here. And that's how you create this sloping surfaces. Okay, unfortunately, it's incompatible with the split faces, and there are works around. For example, instead of creating split faces, I could do a region, annotation region. Fill regions are view-specific representations of materials. Reset temporary. See this thing here, it's just a hatch that is placed on top of a floor. It doesn't have any depth, it doesn't have a 3D quality. You would use this material or this annotated material to represent a material in a view. That's another strategy. I'll come back to the shape editing tools when we do the restroom. So there'll be more discussion, follow up on that. So I'm going to delete this. Oops, I deleted an elevation. I did not want to delete the elevation. I want to delete this, guys. All right, any questions about creating split faces? For you guys that do interiors, split faces can help you, just like I did split faces in the floor, you can do split faces on an elevation. And so, for example, if you have a wainscot or a chair rail or a running base, you can build your interior elevation with split line, and they will tag the different materials differently.
And Caesar, quick question. So this spreading the face and using, what's that called? Paint? What you did here, that's a paint. So that's again view specific, right? It doesn't change the type properties or anything like that, or no?
No, this is permanent. Like we are actually modifying the geometry. Look at this, the floor. I switched to the 3D view, and now the material it's a permanent change to the geometry. It is usually done for rendering purposes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. If you want to make it view specific, another strategy is that instead of using split edges, you do fill regions. Fill regions are view specific.
Yeah.
So under the annotate tab,
Yeah.
you have region here, and then create a rectangle here, and make this this diagonal hatch. Like
But-
that this is view specific.
And this won't show, I mean, what you fill region typically doesn't do I mean, it won't show up in renderings or anything. It's just a 2D hatch pattern.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think
I use it for detailing, but yeah, so.
yeah, I think the strategy that you choose to represent interiors depend ultimately the purpose of the view. So if the view is going to be used for rendering, they need baked materials in the type definition, and so you should use split regions. If you're not doing rendering, you don't care about renderings, and you're just going to have one floor, one view displaying the floor patterns, then you could use regions. There's really no need to bake the fill pattern into the three-dimensional element. And you can just very quickly use existing lines to define the boundaries of the region. And you can annotate them. You can use material. If you're doing like an interior elevations, and you want to put your interior elevation codes, you can use material tags. And material tags will report the information contained by the material. Let me show you how that works. You go to Annotate tab, Material tag, pick not sure why it's not picking it up. The material tag is not working for me. Not sure why. A lot of annotate material tag. Yes. It's not working. That's odd. I'll get back to you about material tags because I don't know what the deal is. Maybe I have to restart Revit.
So what I'm trying to understand is, so this paint that you did it's not going to change the floor. Like if I were to create another floor, what is the type there, 8-inch? It's not going to have any of these patterns. This is
Correct.
something, okay.
Yeah, so check this out. If I do create similar, which I just do CS, and then do a rectangle, this is the generic inch 12.
Okay.
The split patterns or the split faces do not apply to the new floors.
Okay. So it's not changing the basic floor type. It's something that's on the surface applied. Okay.
That's correct.
Unlike what you did for the walls and all, where you apply the material, if I were to make another wall, that would still have the wood or.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Like for example, if you let me show you a strategy. Like if all these interior walls are going to have a running base, and the base is going to be like consistently 5 inches or 6 inches above the floor. A quick strategy to do that on the interior side is to create a split line in the wall definition. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to select this partition, edit the type, edit the structure, zoom to the bottom. This is the exterior, this is the interior. So on the interior side of the building, I'm going to modify no, I'm going to click the split region here, split region, and you see how in the preview, the mouse becomes into this X-Acto knife. And then 4 inches or 6 inches above the floor, you see that temporary dimension. I'm going to create a split line. There you go. And then I hit OK, apply OK. And this should be displaying, I'm going to switch this to even 9.
I think it's split and you can probably paint it to be a different material, correct?
I think so. But you have to do that inside the wall definition.
I have experience. You can actually create a sweep too on that section, right?
Yeah, you can do a sweep.
Yeah. Profile.
It will add a little geometrical depth to it. So let's see. I could do a reveal, or I can add assign layers. Like here, I'm assigning different materials, and I can say, okay, for the level below, which is what I have selected on the screen, I have this finish 1, and this is going to be, I don't know, tile. And you see how in the same definition, I have 2 materials. Interior, exterior program, there can only have 1, 5, 1, 4, 5. This needs to go down, I think. And number 4. Let's see.
Don't you want to be on the interior wall?
There it goes. Shaded. So you see how now every wall now display a different wall, a different material definition based on the split line that I did in the wall type.
I think
but
that,
again, yeah,
I think that's a smart way to do it because that saves you a lot of time. I've used reveal or an extrusion, like when you go into architecture and you can do either a reveal or an extrusion and create, and then you use the profile and then manually kind of place that in the model, which takes time to model. But this is pretty smart to do it and do it in multiple places at one time.
Yeah. It's not geometrically accurate because, you know, in the field, you don't actually create the same material in the same layer location, but who cares? We're not making quantifications of bases. We're just doing it for representation purposes. And sometimes in Revit, you make these workflows to make the representation accurate.
For sure.
And again, so just to repeat how I did that, you go to the edit type, edit the structure, zoom to the bottom side of this, hit the split region with the X-Acto knife, divide a piece of the exterior element until you see this split line. This is going to add a new layer. You see there's Then I assign layers to this. I insert a new layer, give it a different material. I'm going to pick randomly another material, this guy. And this is a finish for, I need to move it outside of the core. And the thickness 0.1. It's a strategy to do interiors, particularly when you do interior elevations in different materials. If, for example, you have a feature wall or a feature finish, say, for example, half of this wall right here needs to have a different material. You can do split line as well on walls. For example, maybe this is the kids' room, and for some reason I want half of the room in one color and half of the room in another color, and you want to render it. First, define what's the purpose of making this decision, right? So if it's for rendering, make it permanent into the material. So I have this wall, I'm going to isolate it. It's easier when I isolate an element. Then split the face. Select the surface you want to split. Is this guy. And then create just a single line. A line from here to here. You can adjust the height, relative height in an elevation to be precise. You don't have to worry about the boundary. Then click the green checkbox. I have the wall divided into regions. And then the bottom side, I just paint with tile here. So I have the similar materials in a single wall. Then I return temporary isolate. This is something you could do for doing restrooms. In a restroom, sometimes you have tile plus gypboard in the same plane. And so one region could represent the 4x4 tile, and another region can be just flat. And now, if you worry about be dimensionally correct, and you don't want to run the risk of, miss the 1/4 of an inch thickness of the tile, then the other strategy is to build a wall, a tiny wall, like a 1/4 of an inch wall, and put it adjacent to the existing wall. So it's 2 walls on top of another one. So in other words, here in the floor plan, if one of these walls needs to have like a tile on top of it, you do wall. I'm going to do this generic 6 inches. The location line is exterior side. So this wall, it's when I edit the type, make it a 1/4 of an inch. That's just like the thickness of a tile. And then the material will be at some tile. Tile mosaic gray. I'm going to add some pattern. Model pattern, it's 6 inches, 8-inch tile. So here is a wall that represents tile. adjacent to the other wall. You can edit a profile and change its shape as needed. Like if this was a restroom, you can say, okay, our restroom is going to do something like this. I use the split tool to split the line and then fillet the corner. I need to make sure that the lines are connected clean. And so this is a tiny wall adjacent to another wall to represent those two finishes. But this is probably dimensionally more correct. But if you care about just doing it for rendering purposes, then you can bake it in the wall as a split line. So there are multiple choices with pros and cons. You pick the workflow that best suits your needs here. That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and these actually you can join these walls. Join is the process by which you make two walls be a single entity. And so, like, if you don't want to risk this tiny finish be left floating, if this wall moves, you can join them. You join this wall with this other wall. And I think if this one moves, the other moves with it. I know. It gives you the warning that it needs to be moved. And so it forces the users to pick both walls at the same time.
You know, in my workflow, I found that, like creating skinny walls and then thicker walls and trying to join them oftentimes leads to kind of issues. So what I do is in elevation, just go split face, select the wall, and then create boundaries where I can then go and paint whatever I want, tile, paint onto the wall surface. So it's all kind of embedded in one smart object. And so if I move it, it will eventually, if you disconnect the walls, it will tell you that there's an error and have you update the boundaries. But it just is an easier, less clicking way of getting things done, because it's all about workflow and having, doing things quickly. So that's one of the ways that I found my workflow is quicker.
Yeah, I agree with you. Totally agree with you. And this works not only with floors, but also with walls, ceilings, anything where you have a specific area with a different material. There's another strategy for, let's say, when you want to place big pieces of art. Let's say, for example, there's a custom art work, mosaic, a specific mosaic, an image that is going to be painted. This wall is going to be painted by hand by an artist, for example. And the tool to do that is a decal. And so a decal, it's an image that it's placed on top of a wall surface. And this is to like represent pictures and art. So decals is under the manage. Where is it on the view? Where are my decals? Maybe I'll modify it. No, insert decal. Here it is. You start by defining a decal type. A decal type is an image that you bring into Revit. So for example, I'm going to I'm going to call this artwork. Again, if you are following this with me, you go into the Insert tab, Decal dropdown, and Decal type. And then it says this artwork is connected with a specific picture. I'm going to access my picture folder. You can also tap some of your pictures just for convenience. Thumbnails. Let's see what image. Okay, this is the image of me upset about not following standards. This image, it's part of an artwork. The size, it's going to be driven by the size I define on the screen. And these are ways to modify that image. So that decal is there. And then after defining the type, I place the decal. Here's the size. The size is relative to the proportion of the image. This is telling me that it's 2 by 2. And there you go. This is only going to render. You can actually change the proportions using those grips. But this decal is only going to be visible if you switch to realistic mode, because that's where textures are applied to the geometry. And so here you go. It could be any image. And you would use this also if you have like a feature wall with specific type of, I mean, you can do all this in Photoshop for all purposes, and then bring it over to like wrap the wall, sort of like a wallpaper type of stuff. So different strategies of documenting interior finishes, split faces, thin walls, wall finishes, decals, and then use material tags to document it with the appropriate codes. I'm going to delete what I did because that's not part of the project. So I'm going to delete the decal and this tiny wall as well. I am going to keep the base, the typical base for the interior side. Okay, here is this is, so we were talking about interior finishes. I have 5 more minutes and I wanted to talk about roofs, but probably we're not going to have time to. I do want to use split faces. You see how this wall, the demise wall, has an exterior and an interior face. And what really needs to happen is that the exterior side here, this portion right here, needs to be exterior planks. This needs to be plywood. So I need to remove that material from there. And in this side here, this wall, that finish needs to have an exterior one. And I can do all that with split faces. So let's do that very quickly. I'm going to pick the demise wall and the wall that is perpendicular to that, and I'm going to isolate it. Isolated is the little icon of the glasses in the lower corner. And we isolate elements. Then I'm going to switch to the left view here, and I'm going to split the face. So, and let's see how it works with this base here. I think the base is going to be a problem. So I go to modify, split face. I select this face, and then I use one line. The rest, I don't care. One line from here, from the endpoint to this endpoint. And hit the green checkbox. Oh, it says I need to go all the way down. And in the sketch on the face, not on the edge of the face of the split. Yeah, it has a problem with that base. That base needs to be removed. Unfortunately, sometimes these things don't work. But I added a line here, and now I can add the wood vertical material. So architecture, no, modify, paint, and this is the wood vertical. And I place it here. So now I have the exterior side with the appropriate hatch. And then if I return to this side, I'm going to return this to reset temporary height isolate. And then I need to remove this hatch from the interior here. So I'm going to isolate these two elements and isolate element, go to the exterior face, and use also the split face, modify split face, select the face you want to split, draw a line, click the green checkbox. I have a, and now this portion here needs to be interior. I think that's the plywood. So you go paint, plywood. Plywood sheeting. There you go. And I return everything back. And so I have the materials behaving and they're supposed to be. I need also to do the same on the opposite side right here. Or the alternate is to have segments of different wall types. For example, I could split, this could be one wall type, this could be another wall type, and this would be another wall type, and you have 1, 2, 3 wall types, or maybe 1 and 3 is the same, they're just flipped. And then you just need to be careful so that they are correctly aligned. Two different strategies to do the same thing. Okay, let's see. I'm going to quickly fix that. I'm going to select this wall and select the demise wall. Isolate it. Isolate elements. Switch to the left view. Split elements. Draw a boundary line. Again, I think this is going to give me an error with that base at the bottom. The green checkbox. And now paint tool, modify paint, plywood sheeting. There you go. And then I reset temporary isolate. Okay, so now the materials are the way they are expected. To delete regions, you see how there's this one here. It's as simple as going back to the paint and remove the paint. You remove the paint, it takes you back to the previous material. Remove paint is in the drop-down list. And then if you want to delete it, you select the split face. You can just hover over and select it, and then hit the delete tool. That's it. Okay, I'm going to save this file. It's 7:15. Sorry if I went too fast in the past 10 minutes, but here's the file if you want to play with it. The recording, it's also should be ready by the end of the class. If you have questions, stay with me. Happy to look over your shoulder and your machine. Next class, we're going to place the roof. We're going to finish the interior. But a lot of the discussion around materials and interiors, we already covered. Next week, also next Wednesday, we're probably going to go over Twinmotion. So I'm going to give you instructions on Monday on how to get ready with Twinmotion. Twinmotion is now available as a subscription for Revit subscribers. I'll give you some, I'll go over with you next class on how to download it. Okay, save your file. Any question? Question? Otherwise, guys, I'll see you next Monday. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Caesar. Good night.
Good night. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I'm gonna stop
Thank you.
sharing here.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So my firm doesn't, we don't have Revit yet. I mean, we have the trial, but we're not using it for work. So we're debating between Revit LT and the full version of Revit. I'm still going through it, looking at all the differences and stuff, but the modify sub-elements for the sloping floors. Do you know much about Revit LT? Like what's, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a simple-ish way to work with sloping the floor? Because I know that's not part of Revit LT. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, when you select a floor or a roof in Revit LT, the feature is not available.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose you can build it as roofs or sloping floors, but sloping floors, there's only so much you can do with sloping floors. Let me share my screen here. Share. Oh, I know. What you could do is use the in-place masses. I'll show you very quickly. An in-place mass, it's a conceptual representation of an element of any category. So under the architectural tab, components, you model in place. Then you select, I want to create an in-place element using the category of floors. Give it a name. And then I'm going to use an extrusion, a rectangular extrusion. This floor is it's an in-place floor, but I can continue editing here using some of the split functionality in the mass editor.
So what if in-place modeling isn't part of LT? Because I'm looking at the comparison right now, and it says in-place modeling is not part of LT.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
No, I just quickly looked it up. I'm like, oh, something sounding like, yeah, anyways. I'm guessing there's not an easy way around it, but I have to ask.
Let me just double confirm. Revit workaround for model in place. Oh, you can use a family according to this.
Okay.
So great. I'll go to the family editor. You will have access to all the family solid editors, and you can pick edges and vertices and push and pull them in the family editor. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, well, that's why LT is so much cheaper, right? You lose a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the biggest one is the ability to work on a central model.
Yeah, on that note, if you don't mind me asking, so I know for the full version of Revit, you can like have multiple people working on the same model at the same time or something to that effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
With LT, you can't have that. Only one person can open the file at any one time, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But like if you're a firm, for example, that's working with another firm, and this firm has like is using BIM Collaborator Pro, BIM 360, for example, you can insert your model in their cloud environment using this save as cloud model. I think this is available in LT, but only one person can work at a time.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds about right. I'm trying to figure out cost wise what would be the best for us, and I don't know if we do enough to justify the full version. So I'm probably going to have more questions in the coming classes about some stuff.
How much staff is in your firm?
There's essentially 3 of us who would be working in Revit. So pretty small. We do mostly like tenant improvement, smaller projects, occasionally like ground up stuff, but not often.
And
unfortunately very little rendering.
Yeah, let me just stop the recording here. I didn't say this, but as part of the if you want to give it a trial, I don't know if the 3 of you are in this class, but as part of OXMAN college students, you get, I think, a 3-year working version of full Revit. You should, if you want it, you can request it to Lana.
Yeah, we're all using the student trial year version, but do we get a 3-year? Is it a different thing? The 3-year?
I don't know if it was 3 years or 1 year.
Okay.
I think it might be, I don't know. It was 3 years a couple of years ago, because I used to teach this at and OXMAN College qualifies you for qualifies as a higher learning institution, and as a token of being a student of this course, you can get a full working version, at least a year.
Okay.
The 3 years, I don't know. Maybe don't quote me on the 3 years. Maybe the 1 year for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I have open right now. Unless there's something different from a student version, because I know when I was in school, AutoCAD had a specific student version that would print student version on any PDF you made.
No,
I don't know if Revit has that.
No, not at all.
Okay.
They removed the watermark. It was in Revit 28, to 2010, and then they remove it.
Okay.
So
Okay. Also, do you know, because obviously Twinmotion is not part of LT, but do you know if there's a way to export LT to SketchUp, or how? I know you mentioned in the first class that the cloud rendering isn't that great.
yeah,
Is it actually bad, or is it just kind of limiting?
no, it's good enough. It's good enough, and I'm going to go over that. It is the problem is the token based, and so you get a certain amount of free credits when you purchase it first. I think it's 100 credits. And if you don't do a lot of rendering, you're going to find out that those credits expire pretty easily, very fast. Then you have to purchase credits, and I think they sell them 100 credits at a time. I think that $1 per credit. If you're going to spend $400, $500 in credits, you might as well just get an add-in or a standalone rendering tool,
Yeah, if we were doing that, I would just force our company to go with the full version.
But even though Twinmotion is not, so the Twinmotion plugin, it's only available to Revit full users, but the Twinmotion standalone version is still free.
Okay.
So you can download Twinmotion standalone, not the Revit version, and then use the conversion is the data. Oh, but yeah,
you need a plugin
Revit
for
LT,
Datasmith, right?
Yeah, Datasmith's not gonna.
Yeah. I was thinking about that because I've started using Unreal Engine for a few things, but I kind of sad you need plugin.
But you can in LT you can export to FBX, right?
What is FP? What is that?
FBX is a file format that maintain the geometrical integrity and the material.
Oh yeah, okay.
And FB and Datasmith and I think there's a Datasmith conversion.
Okay.
Standalone.
You got to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Yeah, it's like doing 2 or 3 steps to get it to work. Because then FBX needs to be the Datasmith exporter, a standalone exporter needs to convert so Revit to FBX, XBX to Datasmith, and then Datasmith to the standalone Twinmotion.
Yeah, it makes it kind of complicated.
Yeah.
And then, okay. Well, thank you. One last question. So let's just say hypothetically we have one person with full version Revit and then the other 2 are on LT. And for the what was it? The modify sub elements or for the slope floor. You do that on the full version of Revit. Does that negatively impact when they open it in LT? Obviously they won't be able to edit it, but will it be an issue?
No,
any flags?
The geometry will be represented the same. You will select it and you won't see the way to modify or change it.
Okay.
That's another workaround. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You just use the full version for those Revit specific things like rendering, work sharing, modify sub elements.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you very much for answering those questions.
No problem. Good luck. If you have any question, let me know.
Oh, I'm sure I or someone else from my firm will be asking more questions of you later.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Hope you have a good